Hello, humanity, Americans. I was just a video real quick. People of Connecticut, Weathersfield, locations, areas, states, and names of countries. Every grouped name of countries. We have been in the systems. We have been in A system slash S, tactically ulterior from the one that appreciates Earth's difference as the identity of space slash existence. This is a semi ancient trap that uses names, uses, self value, leaving out proper use of that per how nature uses identities, volume science, how is distinct, non distinct, and simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous with metaphysics. For example, the value of the mind as in a part of you distinct from the volume sciences of physics, too. These are three connected volume sciences: physics, metaphysics, and identity. And so we know, as evidence, they left out how a breaching method employed, what nature communicates with us about black pupils, about black, therefore, and about white. Whites of eyes. Simultaneously, we have the same color eyes, and we have different color eyes. And there are exceptions. There is exception in nature. The other species bodies have eyes that look like ours. And there are exceptions. There is exception in nature. It's telling us, it's showing us how to describe things. It's distinct, it's non-distinct, and it's simultaneous. Identity slash S of relationship to themselves, being distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous, and being only increasing. It's also part of how we could discern this, even though it is hyper invisible, but still discernible. And it is not so one of the things this breaching method knew people would do was to speak and then defend their own opinion on emotions or passions, for example, individually or grouped, and or about other people's, only to leave out the natural function by nature with that. So we could discern if a quality of factory nature, that is, as criminal insidiousness slash hypercriminal insidiousness, as we'll observe. I'm not a lawyer, but we could use the hyper evidence. There's a hyper evidential trail of lawyers, names on all sides of criminal and of civil cases, victims and victims advocates, and the sources and roles, names, in other words, on the records and not involved with the uses of locations, the way the breaching method we employed, even Jim Crow laws, effectively to measure and maintain. Other things, others, or selves blamed for the breaching method, which our founders communicated for us to communicate about and to understand. But communications is simultaneously greater than and more finite than. And it deals with what is active, the value of how it being. So these are three states. When we communicate, there's already the beginning came, the middle. It's not just the beginning, middle, and end. It's not just time. The extent of the past we know. The extent we know is active now. And the extent we know is to come. The finish could just run out of battery. I could have a heart attack. You know what I'm saying? But to an extent, we know what's going to come. And it begins and ends with where and how Connecticut interbranch, for example, certain type of victim slash hyper victim, distinctly from the other states. And they have roles with names interstates who were since they were kids. Each modern country's name and each grouping of them. Even all the powerful nations at once if they stay and agree to agree to use it, to stay system tacticalitarian than the one that is hyper native pure. Therefore, it will continue to demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And this breaching method knew that those negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures would be in demonstration of itself, what came from semi-ancient times, as a hyper predicate acts delivery system method, a hyper criminal insidiousness delivery system method, criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments or negative treatments, and relative to where and to how we are. Quality as fact treatment nature, distinctly from how we are. Quality as nature as physics. Again, which is simultaneously 3 volumes, because every volume is being completed by the one that is making more of itself. And as English is revealed to teach, is making more of itself through the extent of itself that we could discern. Through it comes with equal. It only increases. What we can actually discern is true always. The ancients revealed this. One identity of volume is making more of its identity through temporary / lasting space nature, and it can be observed. And they couldn't fathom how the names of humanity could forget how to discern this, or why anyone would even fathom to do it, to forget it, or even try to get other people to, which is even worse, because it's a negative identity of relationship to itself, as the identity that has Earth within a special difference, that is increasingly generating other demonstrations of it, with anything positive or negative, anything we could reveal or make up even, has inseparable from the smallest finite part of it 3 identities of possession. From all its group details, 3 identities of possession. And from its simultaneous value, everything has a semi-nature relationship to the complete identity of space / existence. Just like all the parts of each body have a semi-nature of each living body. They have a semi-nature relationship to that living body's identity, its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that, which is more than just consciousness, and experience juxtaposed, which is more than just consciousness, experience, and intuition and/or instinct just juxtaposed. See, the relativity of the singular, truth. Since semi-ancient times, there has been an identity of sophistication that demonstrably was not the one that originally revealed what we remember, but now through having stayed self-value roles as victims, motivations are not important in this case of looking, in other words, who was responsible for which trials. In other words, how reason works, regardless of the subject, regardless if we switch subjects. This is the important thing, because Connecticut's New Britain Superior Court has a whole bunch of names that are involved with people that live near me and that live near everybody. And Connecticut District Court has roles with them, and Hartford courts have names and family members and people tied to themselves who have timed roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people involved with with known legitimately corrupt logic of people and opinions of people A through Z. For example, the value of voting. If the value of voting, in other words, relative to where and to how mandated laws pretended to be followed by stewards that are a certain type of victim slash hyper victim. But if we tell on them that way, the way our founders told us to tell on them, we are sensed through our own humanity, even if it's group nations, because this thing measured and maintained the strength of each age of correlation age. Self-value rolls with identity theft, fraud, slander of it. Because also it employed use of the difference between how there were collusions with a breaching method and a cause to that quality of as criminal insidiousness, as like a hyper criminal insidiousness that is a singular quality shared to the identities of logic as we know them being and having been formally described as ourselves, as humanity, where it has been, where it is now, and why, and how. And see, but that is dishonest. But it needs to pretend other, and this breaching method knew that. It knew that the names, it knew what kind of impositions would be sickly distinctly too, upon every name of the phenomenon of every modern country, and grouped. It knew there would be impositions upon them they not only would not understand, and they would use all they understood about it to help it get over on themselves. To understand it, if you understand its method, and you have to appreciate why and how we could have the same color eyes, except we have different color eyes at the same time. There's exceptions in exception nature. Some people have the part, the whole part is everything is about exceptions in exception nature. A criminal insidiousness nature of country is gonna need to use criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments simultaneously with convictions. See, and an ancient criminal enterprise, a semi-ancient criminal enterprise knew this, one that came before modern religions. Actually, honest, insane science reveals that there were sciences had become abridged, and they had already been stayed abridged before modern religions messengers were even born. And it is also hyper evidentially recorded where and how that fact is left out, where and how it is only increasingly valuable to understand and use that fact for correlation, because correlation has simultaneously inherent, active, and progressive to it that identity of value progression that can and will only stay perfect. And this relative to Earth's a special difference, where and how a body could stay positive to all parts of itself increasingly, even though its body simultaneously is an identity of relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. So what is positive or negative has and or debates and or treatments of the difference of that have been used by a breaching method effectively to measure and maintain simultaneously criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, quality aspects in nature, qualities, aspects in nature, but qualities generated by that singular hyper criminal insidiousness. I am not a lawyer. The interbranch and the people tied to them as exceptions, like not interbranch, like but as them anyway, like retired and standing interbranch work and or exceptions tied to them work with WFSB, WTNH, and Fox Connecticut News, and they have roles with the military also, all natures of expertise, like with computers and databases. Where and how before computers were even invented, databases were relative a whole bunch of ways to how, where, and how the human fact treatment nature breaching method had been entrenched in North America and in South America with the tortures, plural, a singular torture method, a singular extortion method, and a singular slavery method against fact treatment nature slavery method against everyone. And it made everyone sustained roles with it. And then it became sustained roles over here. And it made Native Americans have to fight with Native Americans about how they were going to, what they were going to do. Because it became a possession of the human fact treatment nature quality /IES aspects /S and nature /S. So we have a certain type of victim /hyper victim who doesn't know how to debate. In other words, and they need to pretend you don't know how to debate. Other people don't know how to debate. So they value the means to get away with this, tied to the relativity of where and how this breaching method uses location /S from some ancient times. Relative again to how it is relative, their uses of our names at database locations names. Forgiveness is because we can show how all sides came with other sides left out of the equations and with not by accident. That's how those other sides get left out of the equation. Like how, for example, even though they were fighting with each other other ways, united European nations that were involved with before America's founders were even born, and African nations, and the difference between that, Asian nations, the difference between that. There are proofs that what revealed before the Republic for America and before the Republic of the Ancients had been revealed, already the ancients had been teaching with yin yang and with alpha and omega simultaneously. And they're being led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. It is 5 distinct identities of hyper invisible but still discernible. Sequence /simultaneously, 3 ways bound. And the same way, an individual cell, one name, one identity is value as nature. So as nature is value. You could have cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall /S. And it has reception of the gases, has reception of the water and its elements. 5, expansions of positive, Anywhere anything could be. It is itself. All exceptions in exception nature come with demonstrations of how it uses exceptions in exception nature hyper additionally from while as any that we could reveal use of individually, anywhere we can reveal individually, grouped or all together, or any way we could make up. So they have types of jobs, they have types of titles, and these are where and how we have our additional names. And this is where and how the relativity of how our names were employed by a breaching method, humanity's names, humanity's volume/S science. So in other words, we have the same color eyes, but we have different color eyes, and there are exceptions. We have the same color skin. We have different color skin, and there are exceptions. Rather than being led to the answers by nature that the ancients had already discovered, that is effectively used by a breaching method to measure and maintain, but our own as humanity's names, A through Z, measuring and maintaining for the breaching method through additional apparent only motivations. So, for example, they've been planting, in other words, everywhere the human body is, people are preventing mandated law, and they are pretending other. That's one of the things that is true always, that all sides, and or they are blaming the causes of it on other things, others ourselves, which also left and leaves out and keeps increasingly left out the presence of other bodies' involvements with it here or there, and the difference of that being the other bodies that are discernible, and or where and how that's also comes with the hyper invisible but still discernible breaching method, singular. Left out, you were not supposed to leave out how our founders had to counter extort the other founders and why they had to counter extort them. Why they had to counter extort them, there was a fact-cheaping nature tortures, extortion, and fact-cheaping nature slavery of everyone sickly distinctly that had already been sustained before they were born. There were crazy laws formally that were in collusion when not themselves the responsible where there's differential relativity. The private ones, the overt criminal enterprises, the insidiousness of people A through Z, having had their education tactically separated from them, not just Native Americans. That's why president/chief. That's why no one defends how Native Americans are our founders. Our founders Native Americans had to counter restore each other because we became the fact treatment nature possession/hyper possession. And maintenance to what nature was demonstrating about that, maintenance to its method employing nature's demonstrations of it, blamed on other things other than ourselves, and rolls with that, increasingly leaving out the hyper foreign body. So to get to it, we have to show the foreign bodies' involvements with each other. They don't have legitimacy. You know, where they do, where everyone's, in other words, forgiveness is to allow voice to show the guilt A through Z. In other words, where we are fact-cheaping nature, where people jump in on other people's conversations and or their collusion with uses for truths for lies, dishonestly. There is a mass dishonesty. There's also simultaneously tactically delusions raw. regarding how you guys left out the breaching method, while simultaneously leaving out how nature answers other than you guys spoke. You guys, there were conscious exploitations of how people communicate other than they say. So Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, has corruption with people that retired and standing who affected adults and kids to confess and demonstrate, record, confirm when I was a kid in Wethersfield, Connecticut. Through time, intercity, that's in New Britain, Connecticut. I also found it's next to the campuses throughout every city. There are things that are manifest wherein how the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures are increasingly blamed on other things, others, or ourselves, better than perfectly for the breaching method, which this is increasingly replacing demonstrations that nature shows us itself. Increasingly, a breaching method was involved, and it is involved from any proper reading of any statute or precedent, let alone amendments. The readings of the amendments have left out how and why our founders had to counter extort to other founders, and they had no free speech. All exceptions, the exception nature, they had no use of that either, because this breaching method uses exceptions, the exception nature as a mimic of that hyperpossession that no one can escape because we are its system. We could ignore it and escape temporary. We increasingly have to ignore how it uses the difference between temporary positive and lasting positive. How it uses with reasons descriptions what is constant and what is variable. Tactical ulterior from our delusions wrought, tactically, criminally, foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature. Adults who are experts on reason at countries A through Z. By the time kids are 17, 18 years old, still basically a kid, legally adult, they have long had self-value. Uses of other things, self-value uses of misuses of integrity by names and or of lack of integrity by names spoken to them, where and how speech comes with magic tricks, just like are presented to physical perception. They never stop being coupled with this. This breaching method employed all effectively measured and maintained without anyone discerning. However, everyone was ignoring and would have to increasingly ignore how nature comes with revelation, where and how it uses truths that aren't being used for lies or that aren't being used by others for lies. Like how it communicates about what black and white are about. And see the midnight sky or the black sky. See the white stars, temporary. In other words, neither one is positive or negative by itself or by their group. In other words, there's a difference between positive that is criminal insidiousness nature or positive. And nature shows us, like, for example, if any system, even if all the countries agree to take part with crazy laws, like witch trials, like with slavery, even less, nature will demonstrate negative value nature progressions acts in nature as criminal insidiousness nature, while it's demonstrating the individual slash S involved with that, including as a criminal enterprise. See, but this breaching method, this hyper archetypal criminal enterprise, if you will, I'm not a lawyer. Also, they use wire crime acts and methods, the branches of government, where they stack on roles with people who and as people who fabricate transcripts and conversations with you and with people tied to themselves. There are uses of location slash S everywhere the species body stands that we must understand. It has been consciously between the campuses. There were names they assign the identities of and the difference of the identities of kids and of adults, and where they're putting records in databases. These bodies never stop being collusions with all kinds of distinct natures of private criminal enterprises, overt criminal enterprises, criminal insidiousness, natures of unions, families, uses of them, directors of the FBI, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence to Corrupt Organization Act, the RICO statute. Now, this is also with the news sources of MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. They have prosecutors and judges involved planting evidences with them on off Central Connecticut State University and with names intercampuses through time. And these are roles with names on off the World Trade Center attack location, leading up to it a long time, then the night before it, in other ways, other short-term ways. They planted post-dated documents and other with names that have other sequence shift roles. With the Ninth Circuit Court, that was proven after the World Trade Center. The Ninth Circuit Court is right next to the World Trade Center, or it was. And the night before, there are people with the name Scalora who have roles with the FBI who've been and other agencies. CIA and their family also recorded confessed to mystery confirmed also on Facebook with the people on off the state Connecticut judicial branch offices, on off a Weathersfield Heights location, involved with retired and standing judges and prosecutors, people associated with the name Brian Silver, who are involved with the branches of government with predicate acts grouped and individual, where they are victims slash hyper victims, victim predator, hyper predator, and where forgiveness is important because then they pretend it's personal. And or they pretend they were doing, all exception nature and demonstration of the same thing because they're planting fake motives with their kids. They're bringing into roles with them with wire crimes with WFSB and WTNH and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. He has roles with names all along roads and routes connecting New Britain and Weathersfield through time, with judges and prosecutors in military, foreign, and domestic, as ones all along Route 3 in conjunctions to it and to that, like the South State Highway, like Route 175, I believe it is. They change the street signs to keep people from being able to describe things when they write things on the social media. There are people with the name Shumack, Joshua Shumack, I don't know his mother's name, involved planting evidence as fake ties to me, fake natures of ties to me and to others, with foreign and domestic, KKK themed, black themed, interbranch exceptions tied to them, and intercampuses. And these are medical campuses. There are two speech class teachers I have who have roles of men and women with men and women of intelligence agency, also involved with drugs and medicines crimes with little kids, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, as timed uses of identity ground locations, little tricks in natures manifest as they are actually, where and how they're making instances, descriptions, totally made up, planting evidences, and all exceptions exception nature that appear to be in demonstration or a demonstration of other, tied to and as locations involved with the interbranch at formal evidence reception instances have state collusions, and how they're staying cover-ups with predicate acts methods. Sandy Hook campuses has some of the courts involved also with the Whiting forensics, who has roles intercities with placements at campuses through time, involved with crimes with their patients and criminals before they got caught, and with other people at other campuses like Sandy Hook has child campuses, has fire campuses, and has a prison campus involved with names that are involved further with a principal child abuser and with medical offenders of kids. Also, still tactically delusions raw. That's one of the things that is involved with treatments in the news recently of people killing each other in Palestine and Israel. We know for a long time, the suburbs were designed for torture, extortion, and slavery, North and South America, before America's founders were born. Through our schools, the breaching method measures and maintains other things, others ourselves blamed for that. Evidence reception, uses of documented evidences that are criminally foreign influence, self-value, tactically delusions, raw, defenses of it. See, but that's also relative to why and to how they're motivated to switch names into branch while they're fabricating evidences. As timed collusion have those names. This is where everyone speaks through others and lies about their motivation. They hide but what came first. So follow mandated law for interbranch. I asked 50,000 times on Judge Napolitano's website to get the interbranch Connecticut onto paper, one name and sequence. They have wire crime acts and methods where they're fabricating transcripts with the phones, Wethersfield Police, with the other agencies. And the co-defendants, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. They have a whole bunch of people tied to doctors and families and courts, judges and police forms, and nurses associated with the mental health, and where they have mental health evaluations. They're planting evidences as roles at crime scenes, including child offenders, leaders of the kids still. Make sure they follow mandated law for Connecticut interbranch and get these federal news. See, these are CNN's. CNN has sources that are involved on off all sides of CCSU with them, with facts, with predicate acts, with investigations, investigators, intercities and interstates, criminally foreign influence, and hyper criminally foreign influence. They've been planting evidences with names like with the FBI. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has roles with names with Covington Street and and in the Britain. Also with prosecutors like a Brian Silver and a Salisbury. He was planting evidences through time with names from Wethersfield, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Ones with people with the name Cololo and CM Faglione and O'Brien have been planting evidences on off all sides of Central Connecticut State University from Wethersfield through time with people in the Britain further involved with child abusers since before they got caught, leaders of the kids, uses of religious locations and roles with it where they're attaching people to fake conversations with themselves about religions, pretending people have unrealistic views on religions to do that. In other words, that's also why and how they have roles with. In other words, they have the roles with their kids and adults, whole bunch, men and women of a Leahy family. Ones with the name Spada, Lombardo, involved with a Ray Cololo, and others made confessions. And these are names. The Wethersfield Police brought up the name Cololo. And there's a Phil Cololo that Bob Chase brought up. Bob Chase is one of the ones at Whiting Forensics involved with various courts, planting evidences with child sex offenders, while tactically delusions raw, and roles planting evidences with them, drugs and medicines, crimes with little kids, with the same ones, different natures of organized crime at the same location /s, not legitimately with police forms. There's a Thomas Dillon and Anna Dillon /Annie and her how she switches that, and there's a Kevin Dillon who's involved with all along with names all along 2 Route Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane and the streets parallel to it and that land behind there, as the people involved with the military on off the state capitol and their roles with the wire crimes, with the wire crime acts and methods roles with various police departments, with the O'Brien and Claw, also various different countries, sick with them, fake with databases. I never had a class with Ray Claw and Joe Lombardo, and the other person that was in that class, Jamie Carone. There are other people with the name Carone, also at Central Connecticut State University, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with the courts and police forms before the World Trade Center attack in that context, and since they've been planting evidences as time collusion with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and identity theft, fraud, slanders, clicks that are intracultural of cultures and inter. And it's also relative to it as timed uses of the locations like Yukon, where they have military roles with overt criminal enterprises like Los Solitos. For them, also with New Britain Superior Court, Hartford Courts, and the names off the state judicial branch offices. They were planting evidences with Los Solitos on off the campuses with names on off my streets. Roles with untimely deaths with them, real or made up until when there's a difference. They don't have the right to constantly each year of everyone's life, but fake things whether relative to how they're being used remotely. They've been using. They had people pretend to take pictures to make a fake exception to pretend to know me. With Perone family is involved with the investigation. The investigators on Fox Connecticut News involved with identity thefts and frauds with them intercities. Identity and on off campuses with child offenders, and as timed uses of names at elderly homes. You're going to see sick uses of probate courts involved with elderly homes, involved with veteran locations, veteran affairs. Certain type of victim / hyper victim spoke for identity / IES at countries A through Z. That, in other words, so we have to have mandated law followed. So Weathersfield town offices also have roles with all these different countries, planting evidences, in other words, and or hiding what came first. Increasingly, connections, uses of that, their motivations are not legitimate. So follow mandated law for the interbranch Connecticut. Stop making me beg and describe things. And you guys are lying about those descriptions too. So these are people involved, Connecticut, intercities, interbranch, interstates through time, New Yorkers. These are also the ones with New York, that same sick way. The World Trade Center has roles with psychiatry, tactically delusions wrought. We're going to examine why and how we have black pupils, white survives, exception nature being communicated to us by nature and other in its place at our schools, and use /s of that at other locations, because this method had perfected and sustained use of itself. It measured and maintained what our founders left us to correlate before we did. Wasn't hard to do. They had sustained Native Americans against Native Americans, colonists against colonists, even their own colonies while they're fighting the country. All difference fake. Quality of fact should be nature. Increasingly, criminal and citizens' nature, positive or negative treatments and or exceptions. Tactical terror from how nature uses it. And then that defendant syntactically can't afford the short words of anyone with nature proper, because then they're going to protract. Fake branches, get them cracked. Below them hides the seed. Below them is hid the seed. Each modern country Hear your revolution's course, vaccines, believe. So, in other words, Connecticut Interbranch uses wire mail crime methods with a whole bunch of families increasingly stacking predicate acts on my street in Weathersfield as ones that did at other spots I live too. So there are means that we can discern this. Hartford courts have roles along New Park Avenue in Hartford and Park Street with families. There's a family that lives tied to an Eric Burgess, also with military, foreign and domestic, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since as people who have been planting evidences into cities, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Um, Eric Burgess confessed and demonstrated, recorded, confirmed he had been influenced by people associated with Hartford Court. And I found out FBI and military to make things up about himself and ties to me. Now, these are people that have been planting fake recorded things on campuses that are recorded 24/7. They have not legitimate roles, training unmarked police forms, and they've been demonstrating that. People on Church Street and WTNH, WFSB confirmed they have roles, demonstrated. True. WTNH has roles with names along Church Street and Old Weathersfield who have roles with predicate acts, with facts, with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with various natures of federal criminals, some of them as co-defendants of his, who also have collusions with unions at corners of buildings, also made up. They mix that in there, so because they keep descriptions that quality of fact should be nature that can't defend itself and afford discern what is capable of our discernment slash S, let alone if we had unity that's not a criminal insidious nature of unity that is constantly being forced. In other words, we have to free independence. You have to follow mandated law for the interbranch. How they've been hiding this is sick too. In other words, you're going to see that they're not legitimately trying to investigate things. They're measuring, maintaining that that no one's paying attention to what's actually recorded. Make sure you follow mandated law for Connecticut Interbranch. Get them onto paper. Have Judge Napolitano get them onto paper too, because he's been asked many times. Please have him be honest and don't pretend he didn't understand what I say or use that truth when I say. They lie about when I say things clear or when I say things unclear. These are Fox News's retired and standing sources. Fox News recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with people with the name Mendez, with the intelligence community, and Demain, and others like with the name Fienza, and people that places they work around Fox Connecticut News, which is also next to the state capital of Connecticut. They've been planting fake things, roles, criminally foreign influence uses of all investigators, their campuses, their homes, their family members. Timed collusion with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. So this Edwin says schizophrenic. He's involved with medical corruption with courts in our countries. In Palestine, in Israel, they have collusions at courts, at prisons, where they have mental diagnosis, where they have collusions with Yosef Mengele. And the difference, they have fake sides. They are collusions with mental health. They have collusion with delusions too in our face. So Edwin is jumping in between with news with child abusers that WFSB forced by attaching me to fake conversations with them. Now these campuses are also with names mayors. There's a former Mayor Gold who non-verbally confirmed, demonstrated, recorded when I was a kid and then as an adult. He has timed roles with various natures of criminal enterprises involved. Names that went to schools that I went to and didn't, where there have been, in other words, I went to their school, they weren't even my class, and they were putting fake things in databases as roles with this. And then if you go back and speak about it, it sounds like you know them or they know you, because they've been timed collusion with overt criminal enterprises, private one, unions, It's you. There is recorded conscious uses of criminal insidiousness itself and of difference slash just to hide those collusions. So I couldn't believe how men or women would jump in between other people's conversations and make sure that others don't get caught on, that get told on, like child abusers, leaders of kids. You're going to see how this is intercultural intra. So a Gill family is involved with the intelligence community where they like to place people involved with where and how criminal enterprises are manifest. But where and how they're actually manifest, they don't understand because they're self-value roles with it and or uses of it and or uses of the difference of that. Where and how they deal with everything that comes before them, with it, where and how there are instances, descriptions, the breaching method that was in place before America's founders were even born. It did this for the complete possession of everyone. So please fix the fake conversation. There is a Roger Suzanne with WFSB who has been roles with various natures of stories all along Route 3. They have stories involved with kids and people that hurt them who have collusions with each other, hurting other kids too. They have the difference of that. They're planting evidences with the story. He attached me to fake conversations with him. He did that. They're hiding with the principal confessed to me and to others, including that recordings of that. Before he was caught, he was being forced by more. There were more involved with a Kevin Dillon, who have roles with overt criminal enterprises, involved with their doctors and their families, also ones with fire departments, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with names planting evidences on my street. So get them on paper with the Wethersfield Police to one name to sequence. From the background, they can get away with making up fake things. They've been using the social media with this, with this. There's a Joshua Schumack who's involved with some KKK themed, black themed people planting evidences on my street, and some interreligious nutbags with the Wethersfield Police Department and their Facebook page. Make them pick one name in sequence. Get out of the schools too. They're gonna say sorry to you, and get those other parents. There's people with the name O'Neill. There's a woman who works with West Hartford campuses involved with the FBI and courts planting evidences with foreign and domestic medical families. Time collusion with overt criminal enterprises. Investigators not legitimately trying to pretend they're plainclothes police. They're acting professors. People on off Wethersfield Pizza near the state judicial branch officers also involved with wire crimes with child offenders, identity theft, frauds, clicks, names on off campuses with medical offenders. Their neighbors are involved with this. The foreign and domestic military. Make sure you get one person on paper. One name is who disbelieves and what thing. And you pick one thing. Get them on paper. Fix the thing and have them stop putting the FBI has been influencing people like Joshua Julian and associated with a Joshua Julian and with a Phil Cololo to plant fake things on and people with an Eric Jensen and all along Route 175. There are people that have my names used with them, recorded, confessed, and confirmed, demonstrated criminally foreign influence involved planting evidences. And then there were time uses of that years later, they're doing the same thing. As the names involved with the names on off the World Trade Center attack, the location next to it, they forced Saudis to roles with them. The same cliques that had between the campuses I went were influenced to make a little make truths so they could use them as lies. Like Ray Reynolds, I don't know him. He's involved increasingly since I had him one instance with him when he was lying about a broken thing. When I was a kid, he's increasingly involved with the intelligence community, also with names next to that campus. I went to it 1 year when I was in kindergarten. So there's a problem. There's a problem. Then they have people with the campus I went next year, increasingly involved with this Ray Reynolds, with the names planting evidences on my street, identity theft, fraud, slanders, wire crime acts, mail crime acts, and methods of them with the courts and the police. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. There have been rules with names on all sides of criminal and of civil cases, and victims and their victims advocates and the sources and their family members. And those are the interbranch switching names, switching sequence, putting fake things in databases. People come online and call people schizophrenic and things like that because those things are involved with the racketeering. In other words, they have to explain how we got into World War I until they can't do it. They have to explain history when we're a kid. They can't afford to explain, criminal foreign influences, criminal insidiousness. We're going to use these phrases. I'm not even a lawyer. We have recorded their roles, planting evidences with all sides in the cases. Sandy Hook even has Sandy Hook Promises has people involved with more child offenders, leaders of the kids, with Twitter and the transition of it. They're hiding that too. The intelligence community have roles with FBI further with upskirt pictures with the principal upskirt. I caught more. He confessed and recorded. There's an Emmett, and there are others that have been roles with different natures of organized crime and predicate acts and fake motives planting and fake transcripts and evidences planting. And way worse for uses of that than pretending things are debatable they know are not. How they get away with that. So former director of the FBI and their roles with the military at Church Street and names on along Church Street locations through time in businesses and homes has something to do with them, with the Wethersfield town offices, with military also, as the ones involved increasingly with the World Trade Center. And the people demonstrated at Central Connecticut State University, planting evidences along Route 175, along Route 3. Wethersfield Pizza will confess this to you with the Wethersfield police. Make sure they get on paper. I want the names of the people at the education board meetings. They've been using that as collusions with sick things at all the campuses. Make sure they pick one name and get on paper now. They attach everyone to faked and changed communications with others, and worse. You'll see this. Is it recorded? Make sure they respond. Don't hide. Don't plot.